Welcome to the Relationship Recovery Podcast, hosted by Jessica Knight, a certified life coach who specializes in narcissistic and emotional abuse. This podcast is intended to help you identify manipulative and abusive behavior, set boundaries with yourself and others, and heal the relationship with yourself so you can learn to love in a healthy way.
Hello, and thank you for being here. Before we dive in today, I just want to give a reminder that my Boundaries Deep Dive, which is $19, is on my website. I always see it as one of the first steps to overcoming abuse because it allows you to create space and separate from the abuser or the narcissist. You can find it at emotionalabusecoach.com under courses. You could always email me, Jessica at jessicaknightcoaching.com for the resource. And now today, I have a really special guest. Manjit Rupri returns to talk about the correlation between codependency and narcissistic abuse. Manjit's specialty is really in codependency, understanding codependency and narcissistic abuse, and she has such a wealth of information on this topic. I hope that you really enjoy this episode and stay tuned because she is launching a course, hopefully this summer or fall, on codependency and narcissistic abuse. Hi, Manjit. Thank you so much for joining me again today.
Hi, thank you for having me, Jessica.
I know you've been here before, but can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how people typically find you?
Yeah, I'm a narcissistic abuse recovery therapist, and I work with clients from around the world. And I typically work with victims of narcissistic abuse. They could be co-parenting with a narcissist. They could be trying to get out, going through a divorce. They could even be dealing with a narcissistic parent, their own child. But I offer counseling for dealing with these situations. And people, they can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I'm on YouTube. They just have to put in Manjit Rupri and they'll find me.
So last time you were here, we talked about narcissism in general. We did more of an overview. And one of the things that we touched on briefly was about codependency and narcissism. And that's what I wanted to explore with you today is how we can understand the intersection between codependency and narcissism. And I thought we could start by just defining what a codependent is and what a narcissist is. Let's go with narcissist first. And I know this description is like so big, but can you give us just the small description of what a narcissist is? Because if people are listening to this podcast, I have an idea that they have the general view, but just in case somebody stumbles on this and this is the first episode they've ever listened to, what is a narcissist?
So a narcissist is someone that has no empathy. That's a really, really big thing. They have an inflated sense of self, jealousy, a deep need for excessive admiration, attention. And a really big thing is their lack of empathy. So narcissists are unable to put themselves in another person's shoes. So they can't feel your pain, your emotions. It's a kind of like quite a black and white way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So people generally, there is the textbook narcissist who's the very grandiose. All of their traits are very defined. But really, you have got other narcissists that are very covert. So covert narcissists, they have all the general narcissistic traits, but they get their attention in other ways, and that is often by playing the victim.
Mm-hmm. And so that
they can be sick as well. So go ahead, Jessica.
No, I was just going to say, so that's actually like probably exactly what connects them over to the codependent is that victim mindset that they can be in. Can you touch on what a codependent is?
Of course. So codependency, I'm actually a codependent as well.
Mm-hmm.
So really codependency, looking at where that starts, does start from something that you've gone through in your childhood. So it could be you might have had a narcissistic parent yourself. It could be some kind of trauma, neglect, abandonment that child has gone through. Maybe the needs were not met. But codependencies does start in childhood. And really, it's when you've not learned or developed boundaries. You do have caretaking habits, people pleasing, seeking approval from people. You can't say no. Might have very dependent relationships where you rely on that person to make you happy, have poor confidence, low self-esteem. You always put your needs last. Really, codependents, they attract people with problems that because they have a high level of empathy and they do feel over responsibility for other people.
Mm-hmm.
But really, if you look at that, I mean, it does develop in childhood. And really, narcissists, codependents and narcissists, they go well together because codependent, they will give, 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 give. And narcissists will take, and take.
Mm. And just sort of like thinking about how a codependent would act in the relationship, what's coming up for me as I sit with it is that there's this feeling of like this person doesn't know how to really set the boundaries for themselves. They haven't learned that. Their well-being is probably based on the people in their life and how they're doing, especially a romantic relationship. And then the narcissist, that sounds like a breeding ground of narcissistic abuse.
Absolutely, really would be, Jessica. I mean, for the codependent, their behavior, they can be, that sounds like they can be quite needy themselves, but
Yeah.
not in a toxic way. They just, because they've not had it, probably not had a lot of love in their own life, but they seek validation from other people. And we know that narcissists, they're so good at making you feel so good at the beginning of a relationship through love bombing and excessive attention, really, really making you go on a high that you've never experienced. And it's an intense need for communication. So a codependent whose needs have probably not been met
Yeah.
is going to, for that, really head over heels. But it never kind of works out because the narcissist will keep on taking and taking. And really, a lot of codependents, they do blame themselves for their relationships failing. They suffer from a lot of guilt as well.
How would somebody identify that they're a codependent?
So I think often most people, to be honest, they don't know that they're codependents. And I'm 44 and I don't think I realized until I came across narcissism and then codependency came up. And I look at all the traits and I am that codependent and my relationships were very codependent as well. But I've had to work a lot on boundaries to kind of hold that back, the codependency. But most really, they probably won't discover that until much later on in life. And it probably will be when they come across a narcissism like me and then stumble on codependency and then put that together. But, a lot of it is from, if you look at that, a narcissist and a codependent, they have two things in common. Both will come from a toxic environment themselves, but they just manifest their trauma in a different way. Because if you look at that narcissist, they have poor boundaries because they do not know how to treat someone in a relationship. They have people pleasing because they can't say no. They form relationship upon relationship and they can't let they have this string of supply everywhere. They also seek approval as well from what you give them, make them feel important. And they're quite dependent relationships as well. And really with narcissists, they have low confidence, low self-esteem. But all of that, although they have that in common, they just manifest their trauma in a different way. So one with a narcissist, it turns into this horrible level of toxicity, this misery that they suffer, this shame. But they project that onto other people in a very volatile way. But for a codependent, they got their trauma in a different way. That's kind of destroying themselves in a way by not having the right boundaries. I hope that makes sense, Jessica.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I know that it's like they sort of go hand in hand, and it almost seems like a match made. You know, the codependent wants to feel like they could help and rescue and do all the things to get this person to love them and to like be okay. Like their wellness is based on the other person is. And then the narcissist is like, this is perfect. This person cares so much about my well-being. The narcissist cares about themselves. And now the codependent just cares about the narcissist. So it's like all the eyes are on the person that the narcissist wants them to be on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I see a lot of theories online about how a narcissist would almost like seek out a codependent, but I don't know if I think that the narcissist is like that conscious to be like seeking out specific kinds of people. I think they obviously want to make sure like they want someone that they could eventually control. But do you think that they seek out codependence?
No, I think that that's something that I touched upon really, and with the other clients, and it's a very good question.
Hmm.
But you've got to look at the. I don't think it wouldn't necessarily say on somebody that, like, I'm a codependent, I'm a narcissist magnet, you need to pick me. So I think in theory, yes, that is true though. But I think with a narcissist, they are. Best way I could explain that is kind of chance takers, Jessica.
Yeah.
They will probably try many different relationships, but really they're going to go for the one where they get the most from.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that they're thinking, right, okay, I have to find a codependent. I've got this criteria. I think eventually, no matter who it is, because you've got, people that have never been in relationships that are narcissistic and they fall for someone, they're probably actually not codependent either.
Mm-hmm.
But they do seek people where they will get the most from.
Yeah.
So with that, over time, they will test the boundaries, they'll test what they can get away with. I think really with that, narcissists, they intentionally are seeking out to destroy someone. So really that when they beat you, they have a relationship, they're on that same high that they're
Mm-hmm.
sending you on. So they're thinking, right, okay, I'm going to find happiness, I'm going to find peace, I'm going to make this relationship work. But really what happens is that the narcissist mask eventually slips because they'll only
Mm-hmm.
keep up with that pretense for so long that they are this kind, caring human, the love bombing. They're just not able to sustain that on a long term basis. So that's where things go wrong.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they're intentionally, have that theory that are thinking, right, I need to find a codependent, I need to destroy that person. I think
Mm-hmm.
they're also seeking that happiness too, but they just can't sustain and keep the narcissism because that always comes out.
Yeah. So in a way, it's like, and that's actually something that Lee Hammock just said to me once before too, is that the narcissist,
Mm-hmm.
they actually, in that love bombing phase, they're also like, oh, this is it. I got this. Look how great, let me show this person how great I could be.
Exactly.
Like they're not like,
Exactly.
oh, I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that are like, oh, I found this person, I'm going to control them. But in this, like in the capacity, I think that we're talking about is that a lot of times the narcissist, they think they've won, they're sold on it too, until it starts to really,
Of
you know,
course.
unravel.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. There probably are, percentage of narcissists really that they'll be the more darker ones with the sort of darker traits that their pure intention would be, I need to control.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's been a while since I've read a lot of the literature on codependency, but for a long time, and especially in my early 20s, I realized that I had a lot of codependent qualities and I really wanted to work to break them. And one of them that came up for me was control. I realized that I wasn't like overtly controlling, but I was more like covertly controlling. Like I wanted to know where the person was. I needed to get a text from them in order for my nervous system to calm down. I would find ways to make plans with them, even if they said they weren't available. And this was all when I was really young, but I was very aware of what I was
hmm
doing. And also
hmm
that when but I was also reading a lot of books on it, but I was aware that my nervous system calmed down when I got that touch or like not, whether it was like a text message, a phone call, like time with them. And now I'm not like that at all. But in the
hmm
past, I remember feeling how clingy I was. And I feel like that same type of behavior can also be very, the narcissist engages in a lot of the same types of things as well. And I was thinking about this before we got on about the threat of control that can exist in both the codependent and the narcissist, which
absolutely.
and so can you touch a little bit like how that would show up in the relationship? Like we have a codependent, we have a narcissist, and they're playing this game. It's almost like feels like almost like dodgeball of control in some way.
Oh, of course, yeah, yeah. So I think it's very true, really. I mean, I think I've exhibited some of those behaviors too a long, long while ago. But I think together, if that is, it would be incredibly chaotic because I
Yeah.
think really that for a codependent who's quite needy and quite clingy, needs reassurance, constant, kind of the reassurance that I'm there for you, I'm not doing anything. For a narcissist, that they can be quite shady at times, can't they? And give you, and really, there's the ghosting that starts, there's the projection that starts, there's the big thing is ghosting actually. So, how would that make a codependent view that make them more clingy
Yeah.
and more have a need for attention? They'll feel a lot more insecure. And that would lead to a lot more arguments, I believe, that I think it'd just be a very, very chaotic relationship. But I think a big thing that identified and realized that, if your relationship, I mean, a codependent will not have learned boundaries early on in childhood. So, that it is like, for me, a 37-year-old I was at that time, having to work on boundaries that I've never had. That's decades.
Yeah.
So, really, I think it is okay to recognize that if somebody makes you feel uncomfortable and it is an infringement on your boundary, that isn't the right person for you. So it's fine to recognize that, okay, that person is causing me discomfort. That's not working for me. So a codependent, they can break that cycle with having the boundaries, learning about their own self care. But yeah, together it would be an incredibly chaotic relationship
Yeah. Yeah.
and a lot of arguments and a lot of insecurity because really a narcissist, they are going to, the intentional, not intentional, they are going to cause that insecurity regardless. So that will make you feel a lot more insecure, more needy, and just would be a very, very bad, bad combination.
Yeah. As we're talking about it, I can almost imagine like a disagreement between a codependent and a narcissist where all the blame is being put on the codependent. The codependent likely takes a lot of it, fights back on a little bit, but setting the boundaries are probably very
hmm
difficult because the narcissist is just going to project that blame forward and the codependent is going to take it because they probably feel like they need to in order
hmm
to save the relationship, which is most likely their supply in some way.
Yeah.
And so when we think about trying to break free from these patterns, and maybe we could just focus on the codependent first. If someone is realizing, all right, I definitely have a lot of these behaviors. I know for me, the first thing I did was I picked up a few books on codependency, and a lot of them are based on like the alcoholic and being codependent, at least when I was reading them, which was probably about 10 years ago, if not more
Sure.
than that. And so if somebody wanted to begin to unpack what that looked like and understand why they do what they do, is there a resource that you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm actually working on a breaking codependency program, and
Mm,
that should be available online sometime this year. It's just kind of taking me a lot longer than I anticipated, and
yeah.
that's probably my own perfectionism as well. But I mean, in that there will be a lot of things that codependents can work on, what
Mm,
codependency is, the pattern of codependency, narcissistic and codependent relationships. Really, there's a lot of, but there will be a lot of exercises in that program, and which will help you to identify your codependent self, work on boundaries, develop hobbies. Really, it is about working on you and putting yourself first and
yeah. It
working
sounds
through
like
the guilt because, yeah,
a lot of it is about bringing it inward, instead of looking outward, at everything,
mm,
it's looking inward first, which might be very
yeah,
scary.
absolutely. Yeah, it can be. I mean, really looking at your own demons yourself, that's not easy either
Yeah.
because that can be incredibly hard and some people are just not ready, but you will be in your own time. But I think it's going to be a wonderful program. I mean, that I hope that is available sometime this year, but kind of in the meantime that there's loads of different books on codependency that, if you go on, look in your bookstore, Amazon, there'll be loads of books, but I do think that putting practical help in place is also important. So, going to be a lot of different exercises in there, different worksheets that people can do as well. So, yeah, I'm really excited to launch that at some point this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That sounds like a great program to begin to start to unravel
Yes.
all the threads of codependency.
Hmm.
Let's touch on how a codependent, like say somebody, they recognize that they're a codependent, that they start to be able to set some boundaries within themselves of, maybe some, disagreements they're going to walk away from or things they're no longer going to do for the other person. And they eventually feel like they've been run ragged, the supply is dry now and they want to leave. I imagine this is extremely difficult. I mean, it's difficult to leave any narcissistic relationship, but I imagine that the pain that the codependent goes through is amplified because they're still healing and they're all and learning new boundaries, but also they're getting abused by the narcissist. And a narcissistic breakup is always so painful. I guess before we like dive into how the codependent can heal from it, can you just touch on how a narcissist breaks up with somebody and what that typically looks like?
So narcissists really, there's different types of breakups really, because they will slowly start to pull away. They'll start ghosting you more, start neglecting your needs a lot more. Some narcissists are just gone and they're done with you.
Mm.
With it, really, it does involve generally with any narcissistic breakup actually that there is no explanation. They're just gone, and really they blame you for all the mistakes.
Hmm.
There's no accountability on their part. There's this circular conversation that takes place, but it's always someone else's fault. It never is the person's fault.
Yeah.
Sorry, the narcissist's fault. So, so for a codependent, really, they're left feeling that they've done something wrong. Because for years or months, years, however long, decades, a narcissist has really, they've projected everything onto you. So
Yeah.
you're left with that to deal with, first of all. But then on top of that, when they break up with you, there's the blame that you might not be good enough and not attractive enough. You don't bring enough to me. There's all these things, so that can make things even worse.
Yeah. And so once the breakup is happening, and I know for me, I remember feeling like this was a gift. As painful as it was still a gift that I was going to be able to leave this relationship. How can they continue to bring the focus back to them and realize that this could be almost like the greatest catalyst to their healing?
Yeah. I think on the onset of a breakup, if I'm honest, that it can take, but depending on how long you've been with the narcissist for, can take a couple of years, 18 to 24 months. That sounds like a hell of a lot of time and a huge chunk. And a lot of my clients, they do say, oh my God, that is insane. I can't wait that long. But they do get it.
Yeah.
Um, I think a big part is understanding what the narcissist has done to you,
Mm,
how they operate, working on boundaries and your self-care. They're four key things that I always suggest to clients. But a really big part is the validation part because, kind of going round and round in their own head
yeah.
and feeling insane, that is not a nice feeling. But therapy and counseling, that really gives you the validation with the right person you work with.
Yeah.
So, often people, they do have the need, they've got to replay it over and over, but eventually it will sink in that they've been a victim of narcissistic abuse and what they've gone through was insidious.
Yeah. I love that you touched on counseling or therapy or even coaching, like just getting yourself,
Coaching, yeah,
getting yourself into something where you can have that outer validation that somebody can be able to see maybe what you're not seeing and help you get to like help you work through that like cognitive dissonance that you're likely going to be in and get to the place that you really
of
feel
course,
or you can feel like you're in touch with yourself again.
absolutely. And I always say that it's so important to work with the right therapist, coach, counselor, because there's a lot that I get that have been invalidated by other therapists. It's not their fault. It just
Yeah.
means that they're probably not familiar with narcissism. They're probably lucky they've never had to go through with. But it's so important to work with the right person because if you don't, you will feel further insane and more to blame.
And then I think that's so important because I reflect back sometimes to the therapist that when I was married and like she, for a lot of reasons were she was amazing, but there are a lot of things that I can look back at now that she did not point out. And I don't think she had the lens of, you
Sure.
know, other patterns to be able to
Hmm.
see what was going on. And I
Hmm.
had a therapist in my last relationship and she, a lot of times would point back to, oh, well, like, kind of putting healthy dynamics, relational dynamics on a disordered situation. And I remember feeling like crazy, like you said, of this person doesn't understand that like what's happening is entirely unhealthy. It's like not but I was starting to
Of
understand it
course.
at least. So working with somebody that
Hmm.
understands codependency and probably even has a story of their own codependency is,
Oh, of course.
yeah.
It's so important. I mean, I had somebody that said to me that, oh, things couldn't have been that bad.
Mm,
And that kind of, it can make you shut down further.
yeah.
So that is not a nice feeling. I mean, I think even with therapy, though, I always say that you've got to be prepared to hear the things that are your reality, and that could scare you. I had this lovely lady once. She only had one session, but she kind of emailed and she said I have to cancel the appointment, our next one. She said that you are absolutely wonderful. She said, and you have given me the best information there is out there. But she said, I can't face this right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do respect that, but you have to be ready for facing the reality as well. And that's not easy either.
Yeah. I actually had somebody this week say the same thing to me. They said, I absolutely loved the first 2 sessions,
Yes,
but I've realized that there's a lot more underneath of everything that's going on, and
I can't do it.
I can't do it
Mm-hmm.
yet. And then they said, can I reach out? And when I'm
Of
ready, and I
course,
said, absolutely. But just remember that we
of
can go at a
course,
different pace. This doesn't have to be every week where we dive in and unpack and there's
of
like
course.
accountability. It could just be, let's start to get right with the reality of what's here and we'll go from there.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm sure that person will reach back out
Yeah.
again. Yes.
Yeah. So if you had to tell the healing codependent, like one thing that really helped you in your journey when you were healing through your own codependence, what is that one piece of advice you would give?
So I would say that a really big thing, it's okay to say no
Yeah.
and not feel guilty about that. That was a really, really big thing. And you don't have to say it you can say it very politely that, I can't help you with that right now. But it's okay to say no without feeling the guilt. And the guilt might, kind of be there. Sometimes I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes I can feel that, but I sit with that and explore that feeling and tell myself that it's okay to put myself first.
Yeah. So being
That
able to
was a
feel the
huge thing.
feelings regardless. So the
Yeah,
feelings are going to come in and they're going to be really strong, but not acting on them.
absolutely. Yeah, so it is absolutely okay to say no, sit with the guilt and feel that. And really, another really big thing for me was that if somebody gives you that gut feeling that maybe they're not right for you,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to act on that. There's a reason why you're feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because most codependents, they ignore their feelings. They will gaslight themselves by telling themselves, I'm just making it up. It's just in my head. It's not real. So it's okay to sit in that moment and really explore whether these people are actually right for you or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, I know we touched on how people can find you in the beginning, but let's just tell people once again how they can connect with you. So touch on your social media platforms and I will definitely put them in the show notes, but this was really great. And I know people are going to want to reach out to you. So how can we find you?
Oh, thank you so much. So people, they can find me on Instagram,
Mm,
TikTok, I'm on Facebook and YouTube. If you just put Manjit Rupri, I will come up. And
mm-hmm.
you can also drop me an email via my website or just email me on Instagram. It'll take you to the contact form via Instagram as well. But my website is www.narcissisticabusetraumaclinic.com. And
Awesome.
anyone can drop me an email anytime.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you breaking this down with me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Jessica. It's been absolutely wonderful. Really enjoyed that.